Dr. Sharma,
Hi.
let's talk a little bit of recycling here. Sustainable ship recycling. What is it? Why is it important? Why is it important to capital providers, obviously, owners, charterers, and maybe I'll sort of go from there just to give a general overview.
Well, in fact, I was listening to Christoph earlier, and he said when he's trying to raise money from the equity markets, there just isn't enough money, because of ESG. And I was thinking, he said as shipping, people don't want to invest in shipping. And when we look at ship recycling, if you look, anybody you talked about ship recycling, I've been doing this for about 30 years now, they have nothing but negative images about this. But ship recycling has changed significantly. And what I find out is a lot of people are making decisions based out of fear, then out of facts, and as a result, you're leaving a lot of residual value out there. So to me, a sustainable recycling is very simple. It's how you recycle a vessel in an environmentally sound and friendly manner, how you make sure there are no accidents, the workers' rights are protected, and most importantly, the third pillar, how do you create value out of a ship asset? A ship, end of the day, is an asset, it's not a liability. And what I'm finding, in fact, just a few months ago, we had a listed company that sold a big ship into Europe. And when I looked at this deal, in the Indian subcontinent, this ship would be worth about $20 million, more than $20 million. And they probably left 80% of the value on the table and sold the vessel for less than, right about, I don't know the exact number, so the rumor is about $5 million. So to me, any a person who leaves 80% or 75% of the asset value on the table is not really meeting the fiduciary responsibility. And my view is, what appears to be green isn't, and what appears to be non-green is. And let me try to illustrate that in a minute.
Yeah.
So let's take this example when the ship goes to Europe and it's actually went to a Scandinavian country. I'll leave the country and the owner's name, out of this discussion. So if you recycle a ship in this area, what are you going to do with the steel that comes out of the ship?
Wait 1 second. I'll go back again here.
Okay, good.
So we're talking about a decision made by a European owner to scrap a ship, not in India, not in Bangladesh, not in Turkey, where there is a supply chain set up for sustainable ship recycling. Decision was made potentially out of fear of other items to try to do it in Europe, right?
Right.
And you're talking about, obviously, the residual value, like what that was sold into, right, sold for. This is, there's an economic impact, and then there's also a sustainability impact there as well, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks for clarifying that. Yeah, so we're talking about two fronts here. So first of all, the economic impact, it's clear you're leaving a lot of money on the table. So for the capital providers, if you're looking at the residual value of a vessel, normally the rule of thumb is at least 20% of the residual value you get at the time of recycling.
Sure.
So if you build a ship for 100 million, you probably get 20 million at the end of 20, 25 years, whatever the life cycle of unit is.
It could have major impact on overall financing costs, where residual values then come out, and financing, used assets as well, right?
Absolutely. So in this good market, you can easily earn that money through your freight income and all that. But in a bad market, then where do you come in? So the economic value is clear. And why the Indian subcontinent? Just so that come into the sustainability aspect. At least those there are some people here who have visited, for example, India. 97% of the items that come out of a ship are reused, not even recycled, meaning reused. So if you have a glass and this glass is going to be reused, it's not going to be recycled, If there is furniture. For example, in the last 40 years, we have generated in India alone, about 62 million tons of steel. So this is all green steel that has come back into the system for domestic use. We look at non-ferrous item, about 500,000 tons of copper, steel, bronze. In fact, just last week, we received a call from a Korean battery manufacturer, and he was asking if we can buy copper from the shipyards in the Indian subcontinent. Stainless steel, bronze, all of these items, fine. We have probably recycled about 250,000 tons of wood. which is a lot of stuff that is reused. So this is all adds to the economic value of an asset.
Sure.
You know? Then comes the part, is it done in a responsible manner? So I don't know if you're aware, just about 2 weeks ago, Bangladesh agreed to ratify the Hong Kong Convention. So the Hong Kong Convention, we talk about regulation for a minute, is only regulation that impacts ship recycling. It's IMO. It was 14 years in the making. It's been ratified by a lot of member states, at least 20 of that. India ratified about in, I think, 2019. And so now Bangladesh, and hopefully, I think it was maybe on Monday, we expect a flag state to also ratify that. And then Hong Kong Convention comes into force. So that the requirements of the Hong Kong Convention for sustainable and responsible ship recycling are very clear. And there are class societies, at least 5 of them, that have gone ahead and supervised the yards and issued what is called a statement of compliance to say that these yards can recycle a vessel in compliance with the Hong Kong Convention.
So there's more oversight, there's more regulation than there ever has been before, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, there are ship owners who depute their own people down there to make sure that once the ship is sold. In fact, we had several ship owners here from US who have actually sold ships to us and ensured they use our guidance saying, what are the certified yards? Once they do that, they want to make sure somebody is supervising this, monitoring these yards, the whole vessel at the end. In fact, I carried a little book that we sent to one of these owners, a 621-page report once the ship was recycled that shows how the ship was recycled. Each part of the ship is documented with photograph, evidence, and a narrative. So,
but that's an added that's expensive, no? Or is it,
yeah,
is it more expensive to have that amount of regulation in India and Bangladesh, or is it, or then should I just do it in Europe though? I think that's right. That's the trade-off.
Well, in Europe, just by the fact that you're a EU yard or a US yard, by default you become a certified yard. You don't have to do anything.
Sure.
Just because you are geographically in these markets, you're automatically a green yard. So whereas in these countries, there is so much oversight because you're under a microscope, right?
Sure.
And these countries have been recycling ships for more than 40 years, you know? And so they have so much domain expertise in this area. And the only factor in the past was there was no regulation on what is sustainable recycling. Now there is. Yeah. So now you can go and look at, you know, the things. We have this other book called the Green Handbook that says this is sustainable recycling.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of these sustainability issues coming in, and there's no reason for capital providers and owners to make decisions out of fear. That's my narrative.
It's going to have a negative economic impact on us, actually. And I think the capacity, though, right? Is there even capacity to scrap the amount of upcoming ships in Europe?
That's a great question, Matt. If you look at the world fleet, at least 50% of the global fleet is going to be more than 20 years old by 2030. That's a big, big number. Thousands of ships need to be recycled. Right now, the markets are great. Everybody's enjoying it. You know, even I think you was mentioning how they sold the tankers. There's a great demand from tier 2 buyers for vessels that would normally be recycled are going to second-hand buyers, right? All this pent-up demand suddenly is going to come to huge demand for recycling when the markets turn. And you need this capacity. You need the sustainable capacity, not just any capacity, green capacity. And so that's the other reason why people need to be aware of what's going on. So they proactively manage that instead of just leaving that. Maybe when you're spending somebody else's money, maybe it's easier to leave that money on the table. But when it's your own money, you have to think very differently.
Interesting. So obviously, there's an economic impact. There's more regulation than ever. You know, what is driving this new fear? What is the rationale behind it?
Well, the good news is it's not too many. Lots of people have accepted that. You know, so it's right from the world's leading ship owners of the world. People are doing it. So it's not like it's all doom and gloom. But you still have that exception, and especially it's more in Europe, Northern Europe, rather than anywhere else. But the rest of the world has pretty much accepted the fact that sustainable recycling can happen in the Indian subcontinent, and it's happening there.
And you're willing, obviously, to work with clients to any degree to figure out how to document, to be able to prove that this is sustainable, that it's green, and And maybe you could talk a little bit through how that process works as well.
Yeah, so what we do is the very first call, if owner says, I want to make sure we want to recycle our vessel and it has to be done sustainably. And so we quickly put together a list. We have a list of about 100 yards that are approved by Hong Kong Convention. The Hong Kong Convention compliant globally, Turkey, India, and Bangladesh. Unfortunately, Pakistan is out of the picture. And I think that industry is not going to last very long if they don't improve. And so you're really talking about these 3 countries. China has stopped as well. And then within these countries, you have yards that are tier 1 yards, tier 2 yards, tier 3 yards. So depending on what the owner wants to do, whether it's what I call deep green, light green versions of this, we walk through each process. And not everybody can send their own people down there to supervise the operation. And that's where we have a program called Sustainability Ship and Offshore Recycling Program. It's a separate program where the team, which is based in these local jurisdictions, they work directly with the owners or capital providers and document. This is what comes out of that, line by line. So yeah, that's a cost to it. I think, if I'm not mistaken, depending on the size of the vessel, it could range anywhere from 25,000 to 95 or 100,000, but depending on the scope, how complex the vessel is. For example, an FPSO is a very complex unit. It takes at least 7 to 8 months to recycle that. So that probably would be, top tier 100,000. But we do document all that.
Which is insignificant compared to the potential change in the value, right? The scrap value.
Right. So if I go back to the earlier example I was giving, the 20 million versus say 5 million. So now you have left 15 million on the table. Now ESG, when we talk ESG, people keep on talking about only one thing, environment, right? It has the S and the G as well. And I tell these owners, guys, why you want to leave easily 15 million on the table? You can just take $100,000 out of that money and give it to any of the social thing, just that can come back to help you. Training workers, helping, education, whatever it is, allocate it. It really checks your social box as well as part of the governance. But as I said, there's so much fear, headline risk, that's a term I hear again and again. And it's actually now, the pool is shrinking, those who are doing that. But it's still there. And when it happens, because for me, I've been, as GMS, we have, I think, personally recycled more than, I would say, 5,000 ships. That's a lot of ships we have done. So we have done all kinds of vessels. We understand the values. And it pains me when people leave that, that kind of money on the table and said, I don't know what you've really achieved with that.
Yeah. I guess really any sort of final thoughts, main takeaways that you want, capital providers, owners, charters to take away from what's happening in sustainable recycling?
I mean, the first step is just ask. It doesn't cost you any money, right? Just ask us to give you a free service saying, this is what I'm thinking. What can you provide? And just start with that. Second is learn. I mean, there is enough literature now out there that you can pick out and say, okay, this is good or this is bad. I mean, again, when you start shipping stuff, when you start creating a recycling somewhere where facilities don't exist, the reuse facility, then you're putting 40% of the ship into a landfill. That can't be sustainable. And to me, it's sustainable. Shipping cannot be sustainable if you do not use the economic value, right? The previous panel, they were saying, what do investors want? They want to make money, But if you make money and feel good about it and you're doing the right thing, what's wrong with that? It's just because there's this perception.
Sure.
So the perceptions, the fear, all that, if they can change, I think it benefits the whole shipping cycle from the charterers as well, when you're adding value to that. And so what we have done as a final thought is, I got so tired of preaching this ship recycling, so we just started buying ships to trade, and we realized owners are very happy to sell ships to us to say, you guys do our mid-age vessels. And pretty soon, in a matter of 3 years, we now have a fleet of 40 vessels. It's a very diversified fleet of bulkers, tankers, gas carriers, cruise ship, container vessels. And we thought, wow, that's a great opportunity. So if you're too scared, please come to us. We'll even buy it and run it ourselves, and make the decision to recycle. Yeah.
We appreciate you spreading the message, letting everybody know that the old sort of thought of what's happening in scrapping is no longer actually what's actually happening. And
It's not taboo.
yeah, exactly.
No fear.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matt. Thanks.